There's a Moroccan-born white Muslim mayor in a city in the Netherlands. His name is Ahmed Abu Talib, and he's been asked a bunch of questions about ISIS and terrorism, given his interesting background. And, they went to him specifically after, I believe, the Charlie Hebdo shooting. So he went on CNN and said the following, quote, "I know how it is to be a product of poverty, and I cannot accept that poverty leads to terrorism. Poverty must lead to a seek to knowledge, to sciences, to be better, to climb on the social ladder. It's about investing in yourself, first of all, and by doing that, you invest in society. And that's the message I try to give to these people. Yes, indeed. I'm not only a mayor of a city, but I'm also Muslim, and that gives me maybe the additional authority to say these things that maybe other colleagues of mine in Europe and maybe in the U.S. Are not maybe authorized to say." So this guy first came to prominence when he made some comments after a terrorist attack a while ago. He said the following, quote, "If you do not like it here," is speaking to Muslims, "because humorists you do not like make a newspaper, may I then say you can fuck off?" He continues, "The Dutch constitution, but also the Dutch society, is constructed in very, very interesting basic value, and that is tolerance and acceptance." So let's break this down here. On that point, to the point of, look, if you don't buy into the basic framework of Western society, fuck off, I could not agree with him more. Bill Maher did a great new rules about this 2 years ago or 3 years ago or something like that, where I think it was when there were threats after South Park showed Muhammad or something like that, or one of those similar stories. And he basically said, look, in Western society, there are certain things that are non-negotiable. There's plenty of room for debate and plenty of room for discussion on most issues, actually. But certain things that are off the table are freedom of speech, for one. Freedom of speech, freedom to protest. When you look at a Western culture, we have open entertainment, legalized alcohol, women's rights. Like, these are things where Muslim fundamentalists are against them, and they actively fight against them, and that's not okay. Now you're drawing outside of the lines. Again, if you want to have a debate about things that are within the spectrum of debate, by all means, let's do that. But certain things are outside of the realm of debate. If you had somebody come up and say in America and say, well, I want to go back and discuss this whole slavery thing, or at least can we go back to black people are 3/5 of a person? Let's do that. I'll be kind, 4/5. I'll say they're 4/5. Let's debate that. Let's have a conversation about that. No. You got to go step the fuck outside, son. You got to go sit outside. That's not debatable. This isn't a question. This isn't a conversation. You're a silly person. You're a crazy person saying dumb shit. And modern civilized people say, hey, not that. You want to talk about something else? Let's talk about something else. Not that. We're done here. Next. Let's move on to the next topic. So he's right in the sense that he is situated better than most people because he is a Muslim and because of his background, where he could say, look, guys, I am Muslim. I know what my faith gives me, and that doesn't mean that we impose Sharia values on Western civilizations. That's a terrible idea. So if you're not willing to function within that system, then we have a problem. But to his other point, now, again, I agree with the original comments that he made for sure, but to his other point, I'm a little bit split on that because he says, well, I don't think terrorism comes out of poverty. That's true, right? So it's not poverty alone, but that it can be, in many circumstances, a factor in the cocktail of things that pushes somebody in that direction. Now, again, I want to be clear that the buck always stops with you. So, you could be a poor person in Slovenia and you'll never become a jihadist. You could be a poor person in rural Alabama and you won't become a jihadist. But so the buck always stops with you, and you're the last line of defense against your own radicalization. But to deny the contributing factors in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, of poverty economic circumstances, political circumstances, etc., I think that's being a little short-sighted and a little naive. And again, you have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis, because I think the world is a complex place and you can't just use blanket generalizations to describe different things. So, for example, if you look in the Palestinian territories, I would say that increased radicalization in the Palestinian territories is almost 100% due to the occupation. I don't think they would be as radicalized if they weren't under occupation. Very simple. In Iran, for example, the increase of radicalization in the 1960s in Iran was directly related to the U.S. overthrowing the democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, and putting in the Shah, a dictator. And remember, they overthrew Mossadegh because he was going to nationalize the oil industry and make the people of Iran rich. And the U.S. said no, and we put the Shah in, and then we kept taking the oil. So the rise of fundamentalism there and terrorism there, it's linked to U.S. imperialism. There are extenuating factors that led to that. But then on the flip side, if you look at Saudi Arabia and Wahhabism, that was in a vacuum. That Wahhabism is hundreds of years old, and it was an ideology that somebody came up with, an ultra-orthodox, ultra-conservative view of Sunni Islam. And there is no, hey, let's blame it on this, or American foreign policy, or poverty, or politics. No, that was in a vacuum. That was an ideology that they came up with, they agree with, they adhere to, and that's on them completely. So for Saudi Arabia, this guy's right. If you talk about if you limit the comments he made about how terrorism doesn't come from poverty to Saudi Arabia, that would be correct. Qatar also. In Qatar, we spoke about this the other day. It's basically state-promoted radicalism, fundamentalism, terrorism. They host jihadis to speak at the big mosque there, and they play it on state TV. Again, we discussed it yesterday. It's amazing. As we're doing oil deals with them, they'd say to our face, oh no, we would never promote Al-Qaeda or extremism, and then they invite jihadis to literally speak at the biggest mosque there. And so Qatar, they're an oil-rich country, not struggling, and they believe in, essentially terrorism. They believe in extremism and fundamentalism. So you have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. And it varies. Sometimes the terrorism is purely ideological. More often than not, there's a cocktail. There's a huge mix of different things that go into it that lead to radicalization. So in some cases, his point is totally true. But in other cases, it's a little more complex than that.